Abundance comes in many, many forms. Today, we're going to be talking about the abundance of money. I love one of my favorite quotes that I heard is from Les Brown. He said, they say money can't buy you happiness, but everybody wants to find out for themselves. So today we're going to be interviewing one of our authors in the Anatomy of Abundance book about financial abundance. So stick around. We'll be right with you. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about the book Anatomy of Abundance, which was just recently released. You can get your copy over at go.patrinawisdom.com/abundance. That's go.patrinawisdom.com/abundance. Also over there, you're going to find a lot of free gifts from the authors in the book. So make your way over there and get your copy of that. Today, we're going to bring up one of our authors. Her name is Carolynn Bottino. And Carolynn, first of all, I want to share that I'm excited to talk about this topic because money, I find in my life experience, that money has been the cause of a lot of problems for a lot of people. It's also been a great joy for a lot of people. But I'm kind of curious about that distinction between the two. Why is it that some people, like, money is a great thing and some people, money is a bad thing? Do you have any thoughts on that before we get started?
Yeah, there's lots of thoughts I have on that, actually. I think that money is one of those things that is such a integral part of who we are. It's part of our society. It's part of how we grow up. It's part of our families, our communities. And it's also a very personal perception. And so it's interesting because I am a bookkeeper and I see the back end of hundreds of people and their money. And I was shocked when I found out that just because you have money doesn't necessarily mean that you think that money is wonderful and have lots of joy around money. And I also learned that if you don't have money, it doesn't mean that you hate it and you think it's awful. So there's definitely a lot going on. And I would say a lot of that goes directly to your money story, which we can definitely dive into a little bit later.
Yeah, I'd love to dive into that because the money story changes and we can choose to have it change. But, like that money story that we're given at birth was the story of other people. And it's a story that we adopted as our own, right? Like that. I remember my dad used to say, find a penny, pick it up all day long. You'll have good luck. Or, we were pinching pennies, or money doesn't grow on trees, and all these different sayings that I learned from my dad and my mom as well, but mostly from my dad. And so money has been, for a lot of my life, it's been kind of like the bane of my existence because, went get to the point where, you're making a decent amount of money and then, I lose it all. And so it's like I don't feel like I deserve to have it or something.
Yeah.
I don't really know. I haven't figured all that out, but I'm sure that you've got some philosophies on that. Do tell.
Yeah, definitely. So everybody has a money story. And whether that is mine personally is I have to work really hard to make money. That theme has been with me, and I've been fighting against it since I was born. Just as yours might be, I don't deserve it. That's a very common money story as well. And I think one of the things that's very empowering is when we're aware of that money story, we're able to really see through the lens of that story and realize it is just a story and know that that story can be rewritten. Because if you don't know that that story is playing in the back of your head all the time, you're kind of going at money blind because you just think that it's happening to you instead of actually realizing that you are interacting and you have a choice of how you interact with money. And so I think understanding your money story is one of the key points in changing and having a better relationship with money.
That's fascinating because I know my money story has been shifting, but here's the thing: is sometimes something that shifts consciously doesn't mean it's shifted subconsciously. So I might be saying things. I remember like when I got into doing affirmations, I am this, I am that, and all these positive things. but my energetically speaking, I didn't feel that. I was just saying words. And I've heard things like, you say these words and you'll eventually believe them. But there were some things that I didn't eventually believe. And so it's because I didn't embody it. And what's interesting
Mhm.
about money. So here's one thing I look at money in different ways now than I used to. And I've heard about, lottery winners. Like the vast majority of people who win the lottery end up broke within 5 years, I think is the number I've heard. You might be able to correct me on that, but that's because their money story didn't change just because they had money, right?
Right. Right. Yes. So a lot of understanding your money story. And if you want to have more money, you actually have to practice having money. And I know that sounds weird, but
Wait, practice
yeah,
having money. Okay. Do tell more about that.
because I think that all of us have this point where, and I see this in my clients all the time, where you have a point where you're like, okay, I'm comfortable with $1,000 in savings, or I'm comfortable with $10,000 in savings, or I'm comfortable with $500 negative in my checking account. And everybody
Mm,
has a different level of comfort. And until you practice changing that level, it it's not going to change. And so if somebody gets a lot of money and they feel very uncomfortable because they have money and they're not used to having it, then they feel like, "Ooh, I should be doing something different. I should be giving this away. I don't deserve to have this. So I should be, doing whatever it is, or I should have worked hard to get this. So this shouldn't be mine. So therefore," and you kind of self sabotage. And so that's why I say that knowing your money story is so important, because when you get in a situation where your money story is making those decisions for you without you consciously thinking of it, then you end up in those situations where you win the lottery and then all the money is gone. And the thing about money stories is that it's a lifelong process. It's just like any sort of, transformational process. It's not like you wake up and say, today I'm going to learn how to be financially empowered and all of my problems are going to go away. It
right.
definitely is a practice. So, one thing that I have done personally is that I have a having savings account, and that's my way of practicing having money. So every month, I actually put away. I have two accounts. One is a Be the Change account because I want to make the world a better place with money, and the other is
Hmm.
the Having account. And so I take 1% or 2% depending on how much I make. I base it. I have a sliding scale, and it
I love
goes
that.
up depending on how much I make. So if I have a $10,000 month, then I'm putting in 1%. $20,000 month, I put 2%. $30,000 month, you get the picture. Anyway, I
Right.
put that into those having accounts and the Be the Change accounts. And all of a sudden, I have this savings account that has, 20 or $30,000 that I never was used to having, just there before. And it slowly has built. And so I've slowly learned how to be okay with just having money for no reason at all, because I think I'm
Mm,
really good at saving for a specific thing, or earning money to pay for, my mortgage, or I want to go on this trip, or have a goal in mind. And I think a lot of
yeah.
people are very good at earning for a specific goal. But if your goal is not having money, then I think we never learn how to do that very well. And I see this
I,
in every single range of wealth. Like I've seen it from the people who make, $10,000 a year to people who have millions and millions. Like it's just, unless you learn how to interact with money, you only know what you've been taught from your family or your friends and your environment.
yeah, I love this idea of a having account. It's like to have money just to have it
Yeah.
with no specific goal in mind. I think that's great. I guess the goal though really is to have it.
Yeah.
That's
The goal is to be comfortable having money.
I love it. I'm going to go open one of those accounts. And so if you're watching right now, go ahead and comment in the put in the comments like if you're going to go do that, because I think that's a great idea, just to see that there is money there. I might never use that money. It might be there until I pass away, but it's there. I know what it's like to
Yeah,
have
and you
money.
might
That's kind of
one
fun.
day wake up and think, you know what, I don't need to have this right now. I'd rather have something else, and it's okay to spend it. But at the same time, it's just the idea of having money.
hmm I think that's so much fun. Well, I want to switch gears right now. We're going to talk about a little bit about the book, Anatomy of Abundance. The subtitle is A Conscious Guide to Creating Prosperity in All Aspects of Life. And there are several different chapters that relate to different aspects of abundance. But today we're talking about the financial aspect of abundance. Step 7 in the Anatomy of Abundance is called embodiment. This is about embodying the idea of whatever it is that you're looking for. And so the title of your chapter in this book is How to Amplify and Embody Financial Abundance. So you want to tell us a little bit about that chapter without giving it away?
Yeah, absolutely. So when Patrina and I were talking about which chapter I would write to, at first, I could have written about just just about money, like, here's how to, get yourself organized and how to do things. But I really felt drawn to be in the end of the book where we talk about embodiment. And the reason for that is that I feel it's really important to take the practical steps of knowing where your money's going and doing all the ins and outs. As I said, I'm a bookkeeper, and I also do money empowerment coaching, and I feel like it's really important to have both sides of that,
Yeah.
because if you just see your numbers or have a bookkeeper do it, or you plug all everything in and then you don't do anything with that information, you're kind of doing yourself a disservice. And so I was really passionate about being in the embodiment piece because I want to have people really understand their money story. I want them to understand how money flows. That's a really important piece. And I also share about my own personal transformation and how I really embodied abundance myself. So I feel like it's the perfect place for me to be in this book, and I'm very honored to be part of the project.
Yeah, that's I love that because a lot of bookkeepers don't have that other piece like you were mentioning, and I think that in my from what I'm hearing about what you're saying is that I think that's so important that you can speak to your clients from where they are, not just from the numbers. And I think
Yeah.
that's the distinction that I'm hearing from you is that you can speak to each individual about their own situation instead of here are your numbers, kind of go figure it out. You made this much, spent this much, kind
Right.
of thing. So
Right.
yeah, I think that's so
Exactly.
powerful.
Yeah, and I
Awesome.
think that being able to, understand your money story without knowing any details of how you're spending or receiving money, you're only seeing half of the picture. Whereas, same thing on the other side, if you're just having, your books put together either by yourself or a bookkeeper, and then you kind of look at it and go, okay. And then you don't understand fully how you're connecting with spending and receiving. Um, it really, you're missing a big part of that interaction, and it gives you such an opportunity to understand so much about yourself and those
Mhm.
patterns and stories we have with money if you're looking at it from both sides.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about one thing that it's something that I used to be embarrassed to admit, but whatever. The truth is the truth, and I'm not embarrassed of my past truth anymore. I'm not embarrassed about my truth anymore. And so in 2015, I left the corporate world and I became an entrepreneur. And one of the things I did is, first of all, when I became an entrepreneur, I came out of the gate with 7 different business ideas. Huge mistake because I couldn't focus on one thing. I had people telling me you need to focus on one thing, to get started. And I had no desire to hear what anybody had to tell me to do because I had been hearing people tell me what to do for 51 years. So one of the things was to put on a food festival. I had never done a food festival. I had hosted, 150 events by that time, but never a food festival. So I had this idea, the lemon zest and garlic fest event. It was going to be held in July in San Diego, and in July it's usually about 100 degrees or so. And as we got closer to the date, the weather reports were coming back that it was going to be a really rainy day. And I'm like, it's July. There's not going to be any rain. I've lived here my entire life. I've never seen rain in July. So anyway, that day we ended up getting more rain than we have ever received in the recorded history of San Diego. Not in winter. No, the entire recorded history of San Diego. And I ended up losing $70,000 from that one event. So the reason I'm bringing this up, Carolyn, is because I didn't want to look at my numbers. My sister kept on telling me, we need to budget. What's your budget? I was like, I don't want a budget. I just want to do this. My desire to do what I wanted to do and take the responsibility for the failure or the success is something I'd never done in my entire life. So my money story related to that was that I don't want to look at the numbers, because if I look at the numbers, they'll tell me what I need to do differently. And I want to keep doing what I'm doing. I mean, kind of like, it's like an ignorance is bliss type of thing. Right. And so first of all, I mean, just like hearing that story, how have you encountered people that have been in that camp? Like, I don't want to look at the numbers. I just want to be ignorant to it. And how do you help them with that?
Yeah, so part of it is I totally understand, because my whole corporate career was in event planning, so I completely understand the
Okay.
the losing money from events.
The desire to spend without having any money coming in.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily agree that you always have to have a budget, but I do think that you have to have a plan, and I do think that you really need to connect with what those numbers are, and make sure that where you're spending your energy is the most profitable or best way to spend your time. And so one of the things that I love to do with my money empowerment coaching clients is I do a money map, and we list out all of the ways that you bring in money, and then we list out, how many people do you want to bring into those things, and we map it out across the year so you could see all the different ways of how you could bring in money. And then what's really interesting is you look at where you're spending energy right now and how much energy it takes to get certain things. And so it's really interesting because, you may spend a ton of energy and time and money producing this event, but if it doesn't bring you anything or brings you very little, whereas, publishing people's books might bring you lots more and lots more joy, then you are able to shift your focus. But it does take being willing to sit down and look. And so if I'm with somebody that isn't ready to look at their numbers, we'll have a conversation like this. And, it's really, up to that person when they are ready to even take a tiny little peek, because I do believe that money empowerment and transformation really happens in baby steps. So if somebody's at a point where they're not looking at their numbers at all, then a good first step is to just open up your bank account once a week and just peek. And for some people, that's a really big deal.
Yeah.
So it's just meeting people.
I get it.
It's just meeting people where they are, and then depending on what comes up, then we come up with the plan of how to make some baby steps to get to a more empowered place.
Yeah, I love this. The title of the first chapter in my book, my first book I wrote was called The Year of Fear. So I broke through a fear every day for a year. And that was the year that I did it, was when I hosted that event. So a lot of things came up that year. But the title of the first chapter is Know Your Numbers, because I had a fear of looking at the numbers, because the numbers would tell me the truth. And I didn't want to know the truth at that time. So that was what I was dealing with, So, gosh, I can't believe our time is up here. It's been amazing. But first, we're talking about the book, Anatomy of Abundance. Go get your copy at go.patrinawisdom.com/abundance. You'll find a bunch of free gifts over there from the authors as well. We're talking to author Carolynn Bottino. And Carolynn, they can reach you at all-details.com. Why don't you tell us what we're going to get when we go over there?
Yeah, so when you get to my website, you'll see that I am definitely not a normal bookkeeper.
Normal.
I combine system, strategy, and soul, and I really approach money from a very soulful place. So whether you're looking for bookkeeping or you're looking for money empowerment or both, I definitely have a unique approach to money, and I would love to connect with you.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Oh, again, that was all-details.com. Carolyn, what is something that you would like our readers to take away after reading this book, Anatomy of Abundance?
I would love all of the readers to walk away understanding that they can change their money story. And by changing their money story, they truly can change the world.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for being here, being part of this book and
Thank you
sharing
for
your
having
wisdom.
me.
Yeah, I just love what you do. I've never met a bookkeeper who does, these two different aspects together because they are a part of the whole. They are part of the
Yes.
whole. And so congratulations for finding that.
Thank
And then
you.
I'm so glad you're in this book. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
One of the things that I've personally found from my experience of working with Action Taken Publishing is that I've walked away with more friends than I had before because of the relationship that you build with the authors while working in an anthology. I think it's an amazing project to be able to get published. It's a fantastic way to get published the first time, and I've almost seen people who get hooked on doing anthologies because once that bug is bitten, you feel like you can release more and more and more and more stories, and Linda's got a bunch of titles that I think resonates with a lot of us who live in the real world.